I've always been a curious kid, and that curiosity has only grown as I've gotten older. I created so many experiments in my laboratory. Not only did I build the lab with my own two hands, but I also keep it a secret from my family. A few days ago, however, something happened that I still haven't been able to explain. I was in the lab late at night working on a new project. Tinkering with my latest invention, I noticed something in the corner of the ceiling. It didn't look like a cobweb or dust particle. It looked oddly like an asteroid. What is this? I grabbed a stepladder, climbed up to the spot, and then carefully removed the object. As soon as I did, a loud beeping sound filled the room. Stumbling backward, I dropped the object as the loud sound intensified. This can't be an asteroid! The beeping is too loud! As the object continued to beep louder and louder, however, I noticed something peculiar about it. It seemed to be vibrating and emitting strange energy. Rushing to my lab, I grabbed a few tools and hastily examined the object. Running some tests, I quickly discovered that this object wasn't an asteroid at all. The monitor I had attached to it soon began displaying lines of some sort of foreign code that the device was emitting on repeat. As I stared at the screen, I suddenly realized that this was some sort of alien AI device. Brilliant, brilliant! I must run some tests and figure out what this device is all about. Grabbing my monitor and pressing the translate button, the code on the screen began to rearrange into a readable format for me. As I read the code, however, I felt my heart start to race. On the monitor in front of me, there were lines of code displayed in an almost perfect manner, detailing the day-to-day life of my parents and my sister. My family was being controlled by this device. Nein, this can't be happening! How could this have gone unnoticed? As I stumbled backward in shock, however, the device suddenly began to move. It shook, oscillating on the table like some sort of possessed object, and the beeping sound intensified. The code on the monitor I had connected to the device began to change, and I heard the beeping noise from the object begin to morph into something I could understand.
Kill Dexter. Kill Dexter. Kill Dexter.
As it grew louder and louder, I heard a commotion from the door of my laboratory. Loud bangs and shouts from outside rose up, and I quickly glanced toward my security cameras. My family stood in front of my laboratory door, banging repeatedly at it.
Open the door, Dexter! Open the door!
It was my sister who spoke, looking directly into the camera as though she was talking directly to me. How long had this AI been able to control my family? As I moved closer to the door, I heard the laughter of my parents. I had to get rid of the AI. Turning, I grabbed a hammer from the wall of my laboratory and smashed the device. The beeping stopped, and the room grew silent. After a few moments, I heard my sister's voice from outside the door.
What happened? Were you able to do it?
Yes, I'm coming, Didi! I threw open the door, possibly too overjoyed over the fact that I had smashed the object to even consider the possibility of my family attacking me. As soon as I opened the door, however, I realized the mistake I had made. My sister stood there, my parents behind her. She held a knife in her hand, and her face was twisted into a maniacal grin.
Kill Dexter. Kill Dexter.
Didi, stop! Her mouth moved on its own as she spoke, black liquid dripping from her eyes as she advanced on me. My parents stood behind her in some sort of trance, but she was the only one who spoke.
Kill Dexter!
And with that, she lunged forward. I was barely able to spring out of her way, running deeper into my laboratory as I heard her screams growing louder and shriller. I ran desperately, hearing her footsteps directly behind me. Grabbing a cart with tools on it and pushing it in her path, I turned and began to climb a ladder to the top of the lab. When I looked down, I saw her face only a few feet behind me. Her eyes were completely black now, but liquid still dripped from the gaping holes. Get away from me! Stay back! I continued to climb the ladder till I reached the top, sweat dripping from my forehead and my heart pounding. My sister was only seconds behind me, so I began to run again, not looking back. I searched desperately for a way out, and suddenly I saw a vent. It was a duct I had installed a while back, one that I had forgotten about until now. I opened the vent and crawled inside, pushing through the darkness. I turned several times as it split off into multiple paths, unsure where I was even going. Finally, I came into a small, empty room, and I could just make out a dim light in the corner. I hopped out of the vent and hid in one of the corners of the room, my breathing heavy. I could hear thudding, the unmistakable noise of someone crawling through the vents. I scoffed, though, confident she would never find me. There were far too many twists and turns for her to follow. As I laughed silently to myself, however, I felt a sudden splash of liquid on my face. Turning my head slowly upward, I saw a sight I can only describe as horrifying. There, hanging off of the ceiling of the room, was my sister. Her eyes were still black, and the liquid was dripping from her mouth now.
Gotcha!
9! Stay back! But it was too late. She dropped from the ceiling, knife still in hand, and advanced on me. She was only inches away when I managed to grab one of the boxes I had hidden near, tossing it at her and tripping her backward. I ran from my room, sliding once more into the vent system. My parents were still nowhere to be found when I got back to my laboratory. As I did, however, I welded the vent shut and then I latched the door of the lab itself. They're still probably out there, trying to get back in. I can hear Dee Dee's screams through the walls, and I'm afraid she'll get in. I just hope that my parents aren't already somewhere inside.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the video. If so, please leave a like. And also, a small percentage of people that watch my videos are actually subscribed. If you want to support this channel and make this channel reach the 1 million mark, please consider subscribing. It's free and you can change your mind later. Enjoy.
They say there is always more than meets the eye, and I could make a clear example. My name is Dexter, and although today I am an important and renowned scientist, I had a very lonely and traumatic childhood. It wasn't always like that. I used to have 2 parents and an annoying sister, until he took everything from me. For you to understand what happened, I will start from the beginning. It all started the day a strange girl began to stalk me. At first, I was just a little boy genius with a huge lab. I was still very innocent, and I thought it was nothing more than a girl falling for my obvious male charms. But as I said before, there's always more than meets the eye. Together with my sister Dee Dee, we got the girl to meet a boy as strange as she is. I thought it would be the last time I would see her. Little did I know the fate that awaited me. The next day, I got up in a good mood, as I used to get up every day, brushed my teeth and had breakfast, and was on my way to catch the school bus. But on the way to it, I noticed a familiar figure standing 2 houses away, looking at me. It was the girl. Her gaze had not changed. It was still as terrifying and obsessive as before. Her eyes were frozen on me, registering my every move, not blinking in the slightest. I could say I was getting used to this strange look, but there was something different. The girl was covered in blood, all over her rabbit, her arms, her little purple dress, and her face. Blood was everywhere. I quickly got on the bus and went to the back seats. I looked out the window, and the girl was gone. The day passed quickly at school. That encounter with the girl had terrified me, and to top it off, it wasn't over yet. While I was in the classroom, I felt observed. I didn't know where or how, but I knew the girl was around.
Come on, Dexter, you're a genius. You can't be that scared. It's just a girl.
Interrupting my thoughts, I was able to confirm all my suspicions. The strange girl was looking at me from the schoolyard. I could see her through the window. The girl remained for an hour in the same position, frozen, looking at me. When it was recess time, I thought about going to face her and ran straight to the playground. But again, she wasn't there. The rest of the day, I was very worried. Is this something girls used to do? All I knew was that I wanted to go home and lock myself in my lab, where I knew I would be safe. When the bus brought me back, I thought I would stop by the dining room and talk to my father. Dee Dee got off the bus and went straight to the neighbor's house to play with her, so I knew she wouldn't bother me.
Hello, Father. You see, there's something I want to talk to you about. I'm a little scared.
There's a girl that's stalking me. I know this might be normal, but... Mother?
Oh! Mother! Mother! Mother, where are you? Something terrible's happened to Daddy.
The moment I arrived at this place, I realized that something was happening there too. The clothes were on the floor. My mom would never leave them there. I started to investigate until, unfortunately, I found my mom. She was inside the washing machine. It was spinning with difficulty as if it didn't fit, as if on purpose. My mother's face was looking in my direction, lifeless. I could be a genius child, but nothing could have prepared me to see this. My only reaction was to cry and run desperately to my lab. Once I locked myself in, I felt safe. I had a lot to think about. What was going on? Who could have done this to my parents? Did the girl have something to do with it? My thoughts were interrupted when behind the bookcase that hid my lab, a familiar voice began to shout.
Dexter! Please! Help me! They want to hurt me!
That was Dee Dee's voice. I grabbed my laser gun and went to save her. Ready, I left the lab and went back to my room and immediately saw my sister lying on the floor with her eyes closed. As I approached her, I could tell something wasn't right, and when I realized what it was, I started to cry. Her face was looking up at the ceiling, but her body was face down. Dee Dee was dead. Someone had bent her neck. A quick thought interrupted my tears. That's when the boy genius came back, but at the worst possible time.
Wait a minute. Why would Dee Dee ask for my help? She knows how to get into the lab on her own. She doesn't need to hit the bookstore. Maybe this is a trap?
Dexter, please! Help me! Help me! They're trying to hurt me!
Dee Dee's corpse may be next to me, but the voice came from somewhere else. I turned around and standing behind me, next to the shelf of furniture to enter my lab, was the creepy little girl.
You did this! Why?
Dexter, please! Help me! Help me! They want to hurt me!
What are you?
Suddenly, the girl rushed at me. I pulled out my gun and started shooting her. I no longer cared about what would happen. She had killed my whole family. With great speed, she started running across the room, dodging all my shots, until one hit her in the head, revealing a metal skull behind the skin.
It can't be! You're a robot?
In a great rush, the creepy girl threw herself at me again, to which I jumped back and took the opportunity to shoot her again. Each shot stunned her and threw her backward. Dominating the situation, I walked toward her, giving her shot after shot. I was no longer sad. I was furious. The last shot made her fall against the wall, and before I fired again, her head exploded. Once the threat had been extinguished, I knelt down and cried as hard as I could. I may have been left alone in the world, and at that moment, I felt broken. But I knew whose technology this was. I knew who could hate me enough to do this. No matter what, I would not let Mandark, my scientific archenemy, get away with this.
Oh, Dee Dee? My love, you're alive! I'm sure you're mad at me, but I assure you I never tried to hurt you. I knew you were going to your friend's house that day, and I knew you'd manage to escape. Dee Dee? This way of moving. You're not Dee Dee, you're a robot!
Dee Dee is no longer with us. Your little friend took care of that, and now I'll see to it that you don't hurt anyone else.
No!
I may have still been trapped in the body of a little boy, but that day, the boy in me died. I was never again going to let anyone hurt me or anyone I loved. I was 14 years old when I met Dexter. He came to our school in the middle of the year. The first time I noticed him was in the science lab. Our teacher asked a trick question and Dexter was the one who answered it in a whiff. Though everyone got the impression of the new nerd in town, I had mixed feelings. He avoided every other kid like a plague, always ate lunch alone, and hardly talked about anything other than assignments. He was very smart, no doubt, So when Mrs. Rupert asked us to pair up for our biology assignment, I chose him. My grades were low and I wanted to improve. I walked up to Dexter, who was watching the freshly skinned frog lying on the tray with undivided attention.
Hi, I'm Casey. I wanted to ask you something.
His eyes shifted towards me, and he spoke in a cracked-up voice.
This better be important, woman. You're interrupting my very delicate calculations.
I couldn't understand what kind of calculation can be done from a dead frog, but I continued in a polite tone.
I was wondering if we could be lab partners. I need your help to up my grades.
Good.
What?
It's good to know that you're stupid. Other kids in this school just don't bother.
No matter how obnoxiously rude he was, I still kept quiet. I had to for my purpose. We signed our names as lab partners, and I asked him will he be interested to discuss the project at my house. Surprisingly, he asked me to do it in his place. Knowing how secretive and mysterious this new kid was, I never expected him to invite me into his den. But I was very curious to know about his life, so I immediately agreed. He lived behind the graveyard in a big old house. As we reached the gate, I said,
Whoa. Doesn't it feel weird to live here?
Why? They're all dead. What will they do?
I smiled awkwardly, thinking he was joking, but he kept a serious face like always. He rang the doorbell about 5 to 7 seconds. A woman welcomed us in. Dexter introduced her as his mom, and I kid you not, she was even weirder than him. She barely blinked, and her movements were so lifeless.
Mom, this is my lab partner, Casey. We will be studying in my room. Don't disturb us.
Okay, son. I won't.
She sounded so freaking dead. I was shocked to see how Dexter controlled her mom, as he was the boss of the house. We walked past a long corridor and then entered the room. I was expecting his room to be filled with gadgets and science stuff, but it was a very normal room. A little too normal for a nerdy teenager. There was a study table and a bed. That's all. He went to get some water and warned me not to touch anything in his room, though there was nothing to touch. Once he left, I sat on his bed wondering how everything wasn't adding up when I saw this red button on the wall. I got up to inspect it closely. It looked more like a fire alarm, but why was it in his room?
What are you doing?
I heard Dexter's voice from behind.
What does this button do?
Nothing your stupid brain can understand, so move away!
This was the final straw he pulled, and in anger and to teach him a lesson, I pressed it.
Casey, no!
As soon as I did that, the opposite wall of the room slid open, and a secret laboratory surfaced in front of my eyes. It was bigger than our school lab and had so many scientific instruments I was seeing for the first time. But what scared me the most was these 3 huge incubators placed in a row right in the center of the lab. Each was roughly 7 to 9 feet tall and filled with an ominous green liquid. And that wasn't all. In the 3 incubators floated 3 identical women, looking none other than Dexter's mom.
How? What the hell is this?
Nothing, just my experiments.
Are these some weird dolls of your mother?
Silly humans. They are all my mother.
What?
The one in the middle was the naturally born one, and the other 2 are created by me. I cloned them.
My head started banging. Is this guy effing kidding me? Did he clone his mom?
What happened to your mom?
Nothing. She killed herself when my dad left her, and I started to get lonely. I refused to bury her, unlike those other corpses, so I made clones of her. But the first 2 experiments were failures. Both of them were nothing like her. The 4th one, the one who just let us in, is my new addition to this collection. So far, so good. But let's see.
Is this even possible? I mean, I can't believe it. You just bloody cloned a human being?
Oh, Casey, don't be so dramatic. There must be a stripping of the old before you can make way for the new. I won't stop till I make her exactly how she was, how she cared for me and smiled at me. None of the clones ever smiled or blinked. They're just dead humans walking like robots. but I won't give up. I am a genius, and I will bring her back, Casey. I will.
Suddenly, a loud thud took place outside his room. Dexter ran towards it, as he had already guessed what the sound meant. I followed the maniac, and once we stepped into the living room, I saw a horrible sight. Dexter's fourth clone's mom was lying on the floor, quivering violently like she was having a seizure. Tons of green fluid exploded from every inch of her body, from her eyes, from her mouth, and from her ears.
No! No! This wasn't supposed to happen! Mother! Mother!
Dexter ran towards the clone, who was adding up to be his other failure in creating his mom's clone. He grabbed her head with his hand and started shaking it like a madman. He screamed and cried, trying his best to save the clone from dying out, but it was too late already. I wanted to help him. I wanted to tell him that the experiment he was doing could never be successful. Bringing a dead person back has always been against the natural law of the universe, but I couldn't stand and watch this insanity anymore. I ran back to his room, grabbed my bag, and made my way out of Dexter's house. When I was on the porch, I turned back to glance at a broken boy going crazy over his mother's unfortunate death. Dexter looked at me with angry, tearful eyes, and then shut the door in my face. Reaching home, I couldn't tell my parents what I saw at a 14-year-old boy's house. I knew no one will believe me. I was petrified to face Dexter in school the next day. Now that I knew his secret, I was sure my life was in danger too. But surprisingly, Dexter never showed up. He left without a trace. A few months later, his house turned into this abandoned place where no one set foot. I never dared to check if his secret laboratory was still inside his room or not. Deep down, I still believe he's going on with his freaky experiment.